All right, welcome to Celtics Postgame Live. Tom Giles, Chris Forsberg. We're going to have Scalabrine and Eddie joining us in just a bit. Perk will join us as well. But the Celtics take the loss in this one, 130 to 122. So the series now 2-1 in favor of Boston. But, Chris, just a completely different Atlanta Hawks team we saw tonight. And also a different Celtics team, you could say at times as well, especially defensively.
Yeah, and so look, give credit to the Hawks. You knew they were going to get their best punch coming in Game 3. They had to kind of do this to get this one to keep the season alive, because once you go down 3-0, you just sort of mentally check out. Credit to the Hawks, too, because I didn't know if they could take a punch and, like, hang in there, especially late in the game. As the Celtics start coming back, they stiff-armed every charge. They never let the Celtics get this thing to a tie game. Tatum there at the end with a chance to tie it and misses the three-pointer. So credit the Hawks. DeJounte and Trey were fantastic, exploited the Celtics defense, which wasn't anywhere near the level it had been in recent games. And the Celtics really got to kind of go back to the drawing board. And after all that time off, I'm a little surprised they weren't a little bit more crisp. But for now, I'll choose to give Atlanta the benefit there that they just played an outrageously good game.
Yeah, you talk about the runs, too, because the Celtics were down 100 to 88 and went on that 11-0 run, and you thought, okay, this is it. They just could not get over the hump. There were a few times there in that second half it felt like the Celtics were making their charge and they're going to take over the game, and Atlanta just had an answer.
Yeah.
And it was especially Trae Young and DeJounte Murray, but 32 points for Trae, 25 points for Murray, so that's tough, and they made some huge shots down the stretch, which we're going to show you in a minute.
It just felt like the Celtics needed a rebound or one stop, and they just couldn't dig in. Or when they got the opportunity on the offensive end, they just couldn't get that much-needed basket. Credit to them for keep going at them. It felt like every time it got to 5 or 7, you're like, oh, here we go again. But they kept charging back. They just couldn't get the one that mattered to drop. But again, I go back to it. I did not know if the Atlanta Hawks would be able to be like in that spotlight, in that moment, be able to rise and against a Celtics team that was trying to make that charge. They hung in there, so they deserve a lot of credit.
So the other thing, too, that stood out to me was, we talked about the Celtics being 15 of 25 from 3 in that first half, yet still down by 7 points. And you thought that was an anomaly. Like, how does this happen? In the second half, they went 6 of 23, I think, by my math, 6 of 23. What was really, though, different was Atlanta defensively. It didn't feel like the Celtics were getting what they wanted at the rim the way they had the first 2 games in this series. It felt like the Hawks were much better defensively at the rim.
Yeah, and I'll be interested to go back and rewatch and see how I feel. It does feel like, just as you said, through the first 2 games of the series, Celtics got whatever they wanted. And you looked at the points in the paint number, especially in the first half, and it was jarring that the Hawks were dominating that much. I did feel for large stretches of this game that the Celtics settled a little too much, that they got a little too 3 happy. And look, we've watched this for 82 games. We know that they have that propensity. I need them to be aggressive, especially on nights where it's not falling. Now, maybe they just sort of got lulled in the first half when stuff was falling, and you kind of try to ride that. I think you just need to know the spots to be more aggressive and put pressure. I thought they attacked Trae better in that second half, tried to find those spots. You just got to do it to a higher level. There's got to be a higher level of focus, especially in the postseason.
And let's go ahead and give credit to Trae Young and DeJounte Murray in this Atlanta Hawks team, because again, every time the Celtics felt like they were closing the gap, where they're trying to get over the hump, you saw them make some ridiculous shots. That Trae Young 3 in the near corner over Al Horford. You had the DeJounte Murray 3 in the far corner over Derek White. And then Trae Young, I think he was maybe got by Malcolm Brogdon for the runner there late. It's just, you expected the Celtics to be able to get the stop, get the ball in the other. As you brought up, too, a lot of the breaks didn't go their way, or Atlanta's coming up with an offensive rebound. They weren't able to gain possession, but the Hawks also just made some very clutch shots in this game.
Yeah, and so the Celtics stayed in that drop coverage probably a little bit longer than I would have felt comfortable with. They felt like they eventually got out of it. But even in that instance, you start switching everything. Trae's just looking to get Al Horford, who just, for whatever reason, I thought Al would be motivated in Atlanta. Made the couple threes, I think, in that fourth quarter to try and spark him a little bit, but just didn't have it defensively. None of Boston's bigs did. I didn't think Rob played a very Rob-like game out there. And so I just felt like they were trying to cobble it together on a night you just don't have it, just hoping to find a way to get it. And when DeJounte Murray's making those corner three-pointers, as you pointed out, all you can do is tip your cap. And look, he celebrated that one, and he deserved it. Like that, those were tough shots, pinned without a lot of space. Again, I go back to it. I tip my cap because this is what I expected from DeJounte Murray. a tip of the cap as well to Trae Young, because I didn't know if he could be as impactful as he was. And when he was attacking and taking advantage of the Celtics, that good on him for finding those spots.
Yeah, Trae Young also had 9 assists to go with those game-high 32 points. And I thought that the way for Atlanta to be able to beat Boston was going to be by taking a lot of threes and making a lot of threes. And that wasn't really the case. I mean, they were just 15 of 34.
Based on the way the Celtics had played defense through 2 games, I did not expect them to get gouged for 130 points. And I know, again, on the road, a little bit of a home energy there for the Hawks. I'm just surprised that the Celtics were just not that good. And, it just shows up. Like, I bet when we go back and watch all these clips, Trae Young obviously puts a ton of pressure on you. He was reading the defense exceptionally well. Again, I go back to it. Like, Al just, for whatever reason, did not have his normal impactful self, just kind of like taking advantage off the dribble. Maybe just because he's conflicted there with the way they're playing the drop, but they certainly took advantage of it. But, that's great defense by Derek White.
Yeah.
Just amazing shot making by DeJounte Murray there.
If you defend him any tighter on that corner 3, it's a foul, right? So that's part of it. You do have to give credit to the offensive player in that situation. But what you're seeing in a lot of those clips was the drop coverage, right? You heard Eddie reference this, Scal reference it a number of times on the broadcast. Philosophically, rather than switching on that high screen near the top of the key, Celtics were then dropping in coverage. So Trae Young's reading the defense and then getting that floater right around the free throw line or right inside the paint. Or if you come up on him, just finding the big guy, which we saw a couple times as well for an easy 2.
It's so hard, right? Like, in one way you're thinking, okay, do you want to put the onus on Trae to read the defense and consistently make that play? Well, he did. But, do you also want to put Al Horford in switches all game and force him to defend Trae? It's pick your poison in that moment. I go back to it. I think Trae has had poor moments of judgment in the first 2 games, but was really locked in tonight. And just every time he got the ability to either hit that floater or step back, he made the right play.
All right, Perk, what did you see tonight in this Atlanta win to make the series 2-1?
Well, one, it started from all 3 of us, and Chris and I especially. We disrespected the basketball gods, and we disrespected the Atlanta Hawks. This team, they came out flat. Coach Snyder came with a few guys off the bench that gave them a spark. All of a sudden, the crowd got into it, and all of a sudden, they showed why they are in the playoffs, and they showed why they were at home. And so what happened was that once they got life and once Trae Young got going, the Boston Celtics played with no resistance tonight. They were playing on their heels all night long. 130 in regulation is unacceptable.
Yeah.
They had it whatever way they wanted it. And so when you approach a game like this and you feel that comfortable and you feel that relaxed because it's so easy to score, you tend to relax on the defensive end, which has been your identity since day one.
It felt like, because the Celtics did have a 9-point lead at one point in this game. That's kind of hard to believe, but they did have a 9-point lead at one juncture in this game. And then you saw Atlanta just getting easy baskets. Perk, as an offensive player on the other team, on Atlanta, if you're watching and you're getting these easy hoops, I mean, that just has to breathe life into the Hawks and say, we can get into this game. We can get whatever we want.
Absolutely. And you never want to give a team confidence. Guys that wasn't making shots all of a sudden started making shots. And all of a sudden now the things that you rehearsed and shoot around, the things that you went over in practice, the things that you went over in film, and all of a sudden you said, hey, it actually worked. Let's try this again and go even harder. I mean, they put on their shoes just like us. So now the Celtics is going to have their hands full in game 4 because now the Hawks got confidence. So it's on the C's to shut the water off.
All right, we got Scal and Eddie joining us now, and I'll start with you guys. Scal, what did you think of Atlanta's performance tonight? Because it looked like a totally different team than what we saw in the first 2 games.
I mean, I think every time the Celtics made a run, they answered the call. I give them a lot of credit. A lot of guys shot the ball well, and I think Perk's right. Like, the Celtics didn't have that same defensive edge, and there were times where they leveled up defensively, and Hawks made big shots or got a big offensive rebound. I mean, to me, it felt like the Hawks came to play and they were good. I didn't feel like the Celtics were awful today. We've had some of those throughout the year. I just thought the Celtics were really good. I mean, the Hawks are really good.
Yeah, the Hawks came out. The crowd got into it. That's the one thing you want to do in a game. 3, you want to try to nullify the crowd, take them out of the game early, but they weren't able to do that. And Perk, to your analysis about the defense, I'm with you. I think that we need to readjust our coverages. We can't allow DeJounte Murray to get mid-range shots to get him going, because then he starts knocking down threes. You let Trae Young get off, and he's hitting floaters, and then he's creating for everybody else. And then now guys are getting wide open shots because of the drop coverage. So that's something I think you got to go back to the drawing board. But with all that said, we had plenty of opportunities. We got the initial stops. We just couldn't get that rebound to close the possession. 23-9, second chance points. To me, that's where the game was won for the Atlanta Hawks.
And also, I think at times, sometimes the Celtics offense dictate their defense and how aggressive they're going to play. I believe half of their shot attempts were outside the 3. And E-House, you talked about this, I believe it was, a month and a half ago before the playoffs started, that the Celtics has become a live by the 3, die by the 3 team. And when some of those threes don't fall, those are long rebounds, enough for and those are opportunities for the Hawks to get out and transition. Guards starting to break with the long rebounds. All of a sudden, the defense can't get set. I would love for the Celtics to just one game, slow down the pace, play inside out, pound them, and get to the free throw line. Have more free throw attempts than they do 3-point shot attempts.